So anyway, get comfy in my chair again. Let's move this. It's in the way of my mouse. And get back to the protagonist we actually like so far. Even if he is now at the point where he really needs to just bolt out of Tokyo and live as a freelance mahjong player after the police fire him for abandoning the investigation. That's a realistic plan, isn't it? I think it is. Anyway, I had a restless night's sleep. I did nothing but turn over repeatedly during a night that seemed like it lasted for eternity. Even then, I eventually fell asleep at some point, not realizing how high in the sky the sun had risen. I shook off the urge to go back to sleep. It was then that I noticed the phone was ringing. The time was almost 10:30 in the morning. It was clearly too late for a wake-up call.
Akasaka-san desu ka? Ohayou gozaimasu. Oishi desu.
Waking up to the sound of Oishi's voice was a little too much of a shock. My delicate ears were ringing. But thanks to that shock, I was suddenly wide awake.
Domo. Ohayou gozaimasu.
ひょっとして今お目覚めですか？出張中とはいえ勤務時間には起きないといけませんよ。
まったくです。以後気をつけます。
あなたの眠気をもう一つ覚ましてあげられるかもしれない話があります。ひなみ沢駐在所から届いた遺失物に興味深いものが混じっていたんです。
That ain't good.
遺失物。
詳しい話はこちらにいらっしゃってからにしましょう。
Oh God, what's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box?
お昼前に来れますか？
いえ、すぐに伺います。
Oishi already knew what my mission was. Since Oishi said it was something that would wake me up, it was hard to believe that it would be irrelevant to me. Honestly speaking, judging by the information from Sato-san yesterday, knowing that my cover was already blown, I couldn't wander to and from Himazawa carelessly. In other words, my investigation was at an impasse. If there was some information there that could put me back on the trail, that would be nothing less than a stroke of good fortune. After vigorously washing my face, I pulled on my jacket and hailed a taxi, heading towards the Okonomiya police station.
おお、来た来た。天才ジャンシ様の到着だ。
遅くなって申し訳ありません。で、一体何が出たんですか?
With absolutely no intention of reminiscing about last night's mahjong game, I pressed him to get to the point. Oishi, anticipating that I would act that way, cut to the chase without any resistance.
先ほども申し上げましたが、今朝ひなみ沢の駐在所から遺失物が届きました。
Lost items that were turned over to the police box were sent to Okonomiya Station after the paperwork was filled out. Oishi pulled out a plastic bag from a drawer and laid its labeled contents on the desk.
財布ですか?
でしょうな。中には小銭はあってもお札はなかったもんなんで、スリが中身を抜いた後に捨ててったのかななんて思ったんですがね。最初は。
I didn't understand how this wallet, so far removed from Tokyo, could possibly be related to the kidnapping. Other than the fact that you basically handed Oishi a wallet yesterday that went into someone else's pocket. If it had drawn Oishi's attention, it would have had to be something dramatic, like if the wallet belonged to the missing grandchild. That would be absurd. Like something that convenient would happen. If that was it, then there were probably initials written on the wallet. Like the initials of Toshiki Inagai, the minister's grandson, T.I. Thinking like that, at this point I didn't suppose that this wallet was something that could get Oishi so excited. Oishi, after putting on a pair of disposable plastic gloves, handed me a pair of the same. I didn't feel this wallet was such an important thing, so I had my doubts about whether there was any point in putting on gloves. However, I didn't want Oishi's intentions to go to waste, so I put them on. Oishi opened up the plastic bag and pulled it out, showing me the back. As I imagined, there were initials engraved there, but it was slightly more detailed than what I thought, with Toshiki I marked on it. Oishi grinned at me with a look on his face that said, "See? We can't confirm from that this belongs to the minister's grandson," I informed him calmly. The wallet was irrelevant. It was nothing more than Oishi's over-eagerness. First of all, there was absolutely no way in this distant locale that the missing grandson's wallet would be found with such convenient timing. After all, the Onagafuji Defense Alliance wasn't related to this case in the first place, so there was no way this wallet belonged to the grandson. Why I wanted to decide that was the case, even I didn't really know. Even though what should have been a top-secret case was leaked before I had even dispatched. In this situation, how could I say this was definitely unrelated? Would it be more prudent to pay some more attention to this wallet? It had only been a couple days since I arrived in Hinamizawa, but in those couple of days, due to the number of remarkable events, my nerves might have just become a little frayed. Shaking my head slightly, I cleared it of unnecessary thoughts. Oishi opened the wallet's zipper, revealing the contents. Inside was some small change and a number of crumpled receipts. Oishi, from that jumble, pulled out a folded card. Seeing that, my heart stopped for a moment. It was a card from a dental examination. The name, Toshiki Inagai, and the age. A perfect match. The dentist's location was in Tokyo. There was no need to explain any further. How far was it from Tokyo to Hinamizawa? It was far enough that taking the bullet trains and cars would still take several hours. Why would a wallet with a dental examination card from Tokyo inside show up in Hinamizawa? Could it belong to a tourist who came from Tokyo? Or maybe a villager on vacation to Tokyo just happened to pay a visit to the dentist. No, it had to fall into somebody's bag by accident. In my mind, I desperately struggled to find a possible excuse as to why this wallet didn't belong to Toshiki Inagai. It was as if it just wouldn't do for this wallet to belong to him. However, weeding out any possibility for error one by one, the haze surrounding the wallet in front of me faded, gradually letting it come into clear focus.
Ne?
I felt a shiver of electricity run up my spine. My pulse quickened and a thin film of sweat began to coat my entire body. From Oishi's point of view, I was probably slack-jawed and spaced out, with a sloven look on my face.
この歯科には問い合わせましたか？
そりゃ赤坂さんの仕事でしょ。私はまだそこまでは。
この財布はいつ頃のものでしょうね。
拾ったのは村人です。昨日のことだそうで。
じゃなくて、この財布はいつ頃落ちたものでしょうね。
ここいらに雨があったのはちょうど先週7日前。中身が水にやられた様子はないから、最長で6日前からでしょうね。
この財布の存在は署内で誰が知ってます？
初期対応の日並沢駐在所の警官、それから遺失物対応で係が 2,3 人、あとは私とあなた。内緒の事件と関係があったらまずいでしょ。 ベラベラとは喋ってないつもりですよ。
電話を借りていいですか？
どうぞどうぞ。外線はゼロ発信から。
I dialed the phone number inscribed on the examination card. I could hear my pulse pounding inside my head. Could there possibly be something so absurd? The addresses on the receipts and cards inside the wallet were all from around the area where the grandson lived. The name on the examination card was also a match. The time we deduced that the wallet had been left behind and also matched up with the timeline of the kidnapping. Of course, it was possible I could just laugh it all off as a big pile of coincidences. There wasn't any strong evidence. Rather than all this circumstantial proof, the contents of the phone call I was about to make would have a much greater meaning.
はい、お待たせしました。中川歯科です。
どうも。こちらは沖宮署です。実はお財布の落とし物がありまして、所有者の連絡先を探しております。ご協力をいただいてもよろしいでしょうか。お財布の中にそちら様の診察カードが入っておりまして。ええ。氏名は犬飼俊樹くんです。カードの番号を申し上げますので、電話番号をお調べいただいてもよろしいでしょうか。ええ。ありがとうございます。お願いできますか。
Still holding the receiver, I pulled out a notebook from my breast pocket with my free hand. I opened it up to the page with the grandson's address and phone number recorded on it.
どうもすみません。はい。お願いします。
I compared the phone number written in my notebook to the one that was being read out on the other end of the line. During that process, I spun around to look behind me uneasily. I locked eyes with the Ouija. Ouija looked puzzled, wondering what the matter was. Why would I feel uneasy and look behind me? That was because the person on the end of the line was reading out the numbers as though doing so straight from my notebook. It seemed that HQ was in quite an uproar thanks to my report. No matter how many times the authenticity of the evidence I had linked to the grandson was called into question, I could only respond that it was the truth. When the lead investigator first picked up the phone, I was grilled about the evidence I'd found that it was almost too good to be true, if I do say so myself. But after having doubt after doubt dispelled, he fell into silence. The receiver was finally headed over to the section chief. When he picked it up, the background thumb on the other end of the line disappeared, and I knew that it had gone completely silent. After asking the same questions about the wallet that the lead investigator did, the chief quietly spoke his next words.
わかりました。こちらから何人か増援を送ります。今日の夕方には到着できるでしょう。赤坂君は引き続き現地調査をお願いします。財布が発見された地域の情報を収集しててください。加納さんは何人か選んで現地へ直接。
The fact that he was sending Kanao, the lead investigator here, meant that the chief had decided there was a possibility that the Onegafuchi Defense Alliance were somehow implicit in the kidnapping. However, it felt as though until the lead investigator, whom he trusted, had verified the evidence with his own eyes, he was still going to be skeptical about it.
どうでした？
本庁から増援が出発するそうですよ。私は現地調査を命じられました。財布の落ちていた場所はどこなんです？
高津戸のあたりだそうです。ここが沖宮。ずーっと行ってここがひなみ沢で、さらに上流にぐーっと上がっていくとこの辺が高津戸です。
Uishi explained where the wallet was found by pointing to locations on the map on the wall. This place called Takatsudo was even more remote than Hinamizawa was.
高津戸界隈はほとんど民家なんかありませんよ。昔の廃村ですよ。
It'd be nice if we could wait for reinforcements first, but the chief said to continue investigating till they get there.
無人の家屋が点在するなんとも寂しいあたりですね。
大石さん、高津戸へ案内してもらうことはできますか？
構いませんよ。赤坂さんお一人ではなかなか自由にひなみ沢に出入りはできないでしょうから、ね。
This is true.
無論また野球帽とマスクをしてもらうことになりますが。
That Oishi had agreed to accompany me was very reassuring. If Sato-san's info was to be believed, my cover had been blown. I wasn't sure if the villagers had realized that the fresh meat dispatched from public safety was a tourist that had visited the village yesterday. In other words, me. But deciding that they hadn't noticed would have been overly optimistic. Given a cursory thought, Takatsudo, where the wallet was found, couldn't be ruled out as a hiding spot for the kidnappers. If the Takatsudo area didn't have any residential buildings, nor was it alongside a highway, there wasn't a reason for even the locals to go out of their way to visit it. It was exactly what you'd call a long-forgotten ghost town at the end of the road. You couldn't ask for a better place to hold a kidnapped grandson. Also, you couldn't get to Takatsudo without passing through Hinamizawa first. Those several conditions made the area all the more important. I couldn't brush it off any longer. There was no longer any doubt that the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance, or somebody hired by them, were involved in the kidnapping. If that was the case, then the fact that this wallet was found might have already been leaked to them. Yeah, this is definitely an option, that wallet was dropped on purpose to act as bait. That's a very real possibility. They even know so much as to how the Public Safety Division was operating. The case of the wallet couldn't be something they didn't know. In that case, there was a possibility that the enemy was lying in wait. Again, why can't we have more timelines with this guy in it? He's smart. To dive alone in enemy territory, surrounded by enemy territory, to say the least, required an amount of courage, nay, recklessness, that I just did not have.
大石さんの動向がなければ、そうおいそれと踏み込めない村でしたので、ご協力いただけて本当に助かりました。正直なところ、またお金を要求されるのではと思ってましたよ。
それは正直を言えば、ひなみ沢なんか好き好んできたがないですからね。運賃でも弾んでもらいたい気分ですが、でも一緒にタコを囲んだ友人の頼みとあれば断るわけにはいきませんしね。
And apparently the way to win Oishi's respect in total is to beat him soundly at Mahjong. Yeah, there's a pretty high chance that we really shouldn't trust Oishi, but who else we got? We really don't have anybody else. And I mean, just as a meta thing, we know that Oishi really doesn't have any love for Hinamizawa. Oishi grinned as he pounded me on the back. It struck me that he just didn't want to jump ship rather than having any sort of sense of duty to his job. Even so, that didn't really matter. Right now, I really appreciated the gesture.
では、早速出してもらえますか?
If the enemy knew that the police had obtained the wallet... Yeah, that's kind of my feeling. If you are aligned against Hinamizawa in some way, shape, or form, Oishi is your best friend, then they would probably have moved the hostage to a different place. There wasn't a moment to lose. But Oishi, without regard to the fact that we were about to head out, began to remove his jacket.
何を知ってるんですか?
まあ、用心ですよ。
He's gonna put on the stab-proof vest, isn't he?
家中の栗を拾うなら相応の用意が必要と思いました、ね。
He's gonna put on the stab-proof vest.
あなたも来ます。
What Oishi pulled from the drawer below the desk was a stab-proof vest. His name was Toshiki Inagai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction, Inagai. There was only one reason for him being here. If you didn't include gym or art class, his grades were above average. This was a result of having private tutoring sessions twice a week. If you omitted the fact that he still couldn't do pull-ups, there wasn't much else that would make him hate school. Of course, he understood full well that his grandfather was a cabinet minister. But he also knew that not too many people that were interested in their relationship. Well, as far as Keiichi is concerned, Oishi has used him like a pawn at every given opportunity, so, you know. He didn't like to go out of his way to bring up his grandfather or to call him the Minister of Construction. And finally, he at least tried to know a little more about what type of work the Minister of Construction did than your average Joe. What that entailed was when you tried your best to make life better for the masses, sometimes you made a few enemies. He knew that all too well from the time he'd spent as class representative. His grandfather had many enemies. He knew that he might personally catch some of that fallout, so he had to be twice as cautious. He was taught that by his parents. That's why, the moment he was kidnapped, he instantly knew that this was one of those occasions. He understood that he wasn't being treated as Toshiki Inagai, the person, but rather as Toshiki Inagai, the grandson of the Minister of Construction. That he wasn't personally at fault, but that this was a result of some unavoidable trouble with his grandfather's work. It made little difference, but when he realized it wasn't because of anything he did, he was able to relax, if only a little. Of course, at first he was struck with the terror befitting his age, wondering what was going to happen to him. But after a while being tied up and only being able to stay laying down, he began to ponder a great many things. First, he thought about the reason he was being abducted like this. He understood the answer to that easily. He was taken hostage to coerce his grandfather, the minister. There was no doubt about that, and suddenly this sounds like a Winnie the Pooh book. That's the same type of cadence I'm getting out of the writing here. He didn't know exactly what the Minister of Construction did, but it was easy to imagine there was much to be gained from threatening him. He respected his grandfather more than most. He earnestly believed that his own grandfather was within the top 20 of the most important people of Japan. This was exactly why he wouldn't forgive anybody who tried to threaten his beloved grandfather. More importantly, he wouldn't forgive anybody who would use him as a tool to threaten his grandfather. His grandfather was really busy and rarely had time to meet with relatives. That's why, with what little time he did manage to scrape together, he just dropped by unannounced. And as apology for not being able to meet during New Year's or summer vacation, he doted on his grandson very, very much. The number of times that Toshiki was looked upon with disregard just because his grandfather was a politician and a minister certainly weren't few. But he never thought even once that he wanted his grandfather to quit being a politician. Because it was his beloved grandfather, he wanted him to continue his career as long as possible from the bottom of his heart. However, Toshiki was now being held hostage, and his grandfather was being threatened. His grandfather, who called him the apple of his eye, was surely suffering. He might do anything to save his grandson, maybe even putting inside his ideology if it was required to save his grandson. He might cave into culprits' demands if it meant saving his grandson. When Toshiki thought about that, an inexplicable anger welled up within him. In his current situation, he was unable to forgive the cowards who would make his beloved grandfather suffer by using such dastardly means. That feeling swelled up inside of him, displacing the fear. What he thought of first was something any boy would imagine. Get out of these bonds, beat up the bad guys, and then hand them over to the police. Images of all the brave heroes from all the manga he had read passed through the back of his mind. In his imaginary scenario, he slipped his bonds easily, floating like a butterfly to evade his captors, then stinging like a bee to bring them all down. But, in the end, it was nothing more than a silly little fantasy. But with his vision obstructed and unable to see anything, it was something that he could get into more than any anime at the moment. In actuality, he was enjoying these little scenarios in his head for the long period of time he was tied up, His captors hadn't really done anything to him that they would feel sorry for. However, eventually he began to grow tired of his fantasies, and more realistic scenarios began to run through his head. It was then he realized that none of them were a solution. Yeah, he wanted to do something for his grandfather, who was being threatened. That he was being held here to inflict pain on his grandfather was the thing that he could least forgive, and also the most vexing. Anime were popular in many, many years. It's 78. Anime was popular back in the 50s. So, probably. And then he noticed. There was a much simpler way he could save his grandfather without having to beat up his despicable captors. That was to remove himself as a hostage from the hands of these villains. I'm not sure I'm going to like where this is going. This rarely means good things. If he was to disappear from here, his captors would have nothing to threaten his grandfather with. The captors had restrained him, but they didn't treat him roughly, and they made sure he was fed well enough. Meaning at most, he was nothing more than the means for their threat. They weren't looking to bully or kill him out of spite. If he behaved, no ill would befall him. Realizing that gave him a strong sense of courage. And carrying his train of thought this far, he let it run its course to its natural conclusion. Right now, at this moment, Toshiki Inagai had decided to escape. His ears had been stuffed with a sponge-like material, acting as makeshift earplugs. However, they didn't do much to actually block out any sound, and he could overhear everything his captors were saying. Realizing that this was to his advantage, even when his captor spoke to him, he acted like he couldn't hear them due to the earplugs. His captors, thinking that he couldn't hear their conversation, talked about all sorts of things without any reservations. Thanks to that, he was able to obtain various pieces of information. First off, this was in Tokyo. It seemed that this was quite a distance away, and on top of that, in the countryside nestled deep in the mountains. It also seemed that his captors were inconvenienced living out here, so he could deduce that this place was far removed from any sort of town. Okay, he's not a dummy. This is actually an intelligent child of some sort. Finally, whenever they went out to buy food or other supplies, they would always take a car. That fact caused him some dismay, because he knew that the method he learned at school for running around blindly while shouting for help wouldn't work here. He paused his little mental escape scenario there. His ultimate goal was to find somebody that would help him. If was somebody who fit that description wasn't close by, his chances of escaping successfully grew slim. A desolate, far-off land deep in the mountains. A place where he couldn't even go shopping without using a car. In this situation, escaping would be very difficult. He grew depressed, and after a while he returned to his original scenario. Imagining becoming a hero like in the manga he read and beating down his captors became his respite. However, as he played those delusions out in his head, his heart, hating to surrender, continued to search for a way to escape. And then he thought of a way. If the goal was far away, then all he had to do was get closer. His goal, in a nutshell, was to find somebody who would help him. In other words, somebody other than his captors. If he faked being sick, then his captors would have to take him to the hospital or bring a doctor to him. They would probably be reluctant to do that, but he already knew that the hostage was more important than anything. In the off chance that something happened, like him dying occurred, they wouldn't be able to threaten anybody anymore. Luckily, he had an experience that would help him fake a serious illness. At the end of last year, he was inadvertently involved in a car accident and had to undergo surgery. The scar from that surgery was still clearly visible on his lower torso. He recalled the pain and suffering from that time. The existence of that experience would make a huge impact on the realism of his performance. He was quite confident in his ability to fake an illness. His captors at first took that as a sign he needed to use the washroom. Untying only his arms, they tried to bring him to where he was still blindfolded. But he didn't try to get up. His hands, now free, clutched only at his abdomen as he writhed in agony.
おい、どうしたんだ？腹でも痛いのか？
He still had his earplugs in, so he had to pretend he didn't hear his captors asking the question. He was about to nod, so he hurriedly had to stop himself.
どったんね。
小僧が腹を押さえてるよ。腹痛かな。
His captors looked down on his suffering form for a bit. One of them proposed a course of action, while another laid his doubts that Toshiki might be faking it.
どったんね、坊主。腹痛むんかい？
そいつ、耳を塞いでるから聞こえてないぜ。
参ったんな。腹痛に効く薬なんかあらんね。薬局行って買ってくるか。
腹痛って言ったっていろんな薬があるだろう。症状がわからないうちはいい加減な薬は買えないぜ。
腹押さえてるし、便秘やん。便秘薬でも買ってくれば収まるやんね。間違って飲んでも死なんしな。
決めつけるなよ。
Well, he is right.
盲腸とかかもしれないだろう。俺のおじさんがさ、昔急になったことあってよ。あれはかなりビビったぜ。
One of the captors leaned over beside the boy, who was bent over in agony.
かわいそうにな。全身汗だらけじゃないかよ。腹か？痛むのか？おいおい、痛むんならあんまり抑え込んじゃかえって悪いぞ。
Realizing that his captors were concerned about his stomach, he inadvertently let his shirt right up, letting the scar from his surgery come into plain view. His vision was still obscured with packing tape, so he couldn't see their reaction to his scar. But his captors were taking it back, and judging from their momentary silence, he had obtained the reaction he was looking for.
おい、やばいぜ。この手術跡はそんなに昔のものじゃないぜ。
その小僧、熱出てるんかいね。体温計あるん？
あるわけねえよ。でもすごい汗だぜ。おでこは結構熱いと思う。緊張状態が続くとさ、昔の傷なんかに応えたりするって聞いたことある。
This little kid is about to outthink 3 grown men here.
じゃあどうすんよ。薬じゃ治らんちゅんてんか？
何の手術跡か知らねえけど、とにかくまずいだろう。下手すると命に関わるぜ。
まずいんて。これは本当にまずいんて。
医者に見せた方がいい。このままじゃ突然ぽっくりいっちまう可能性だってあるだろう。
Toshiki Inagai, with those few words, knew that the situation was progressing exactly as he had envisioned it, and snickering to himself on the inside, pressed his act even further. If you're able to raise your blood pressure enough, you could probably get the look down right and convince people that you were feverish. He didn't even need to see to know that his captors were panicking and running around like chickens with their head cut off at this troublesome turn of events.
診療所連れて行くか。
See, all they've been able to do is ascertain that his head kinda sorta feels hot. And notice that he's sweating.
そりゃまずん。先生を連れてくる方がいいね。
入江の先生か？いいのか？大丈夫か？
人質に何かあったらまずんね。しゃあない。緊急事態やん。
One of the captors hurriedly left in the car. Another man, completely shaken up at this point, wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. It looked like they were bringing a doctor. As long as that doctor wasn't accomplished, the doctor was his goal. He was someone he should seek help from. His captors were probably wary of that happening. They would be prepared for it. This would all come down to luck. Some of the sweat emerging from his brow was that of nervousness. At that moment, the packing tape that was covering his eyes and ears was torn off. The burning light that he was seeing for the first time in several days hurt his eyes. After that, the gag that made it hard for him to breathe was also removed.
大丈夫か小僧。今お医者を連れてくるからな。しばらく我慢してろな。
The doctor was coming. The doctor was coming. Now, how is he going to ask for help, and how is he going to get away from his captors? A plethora of thoughts began swirling through his mind.
分かってると思うが、お医者に余計なことは言うなよ。俺たちも別にお前に乱暴がしたいわけじゃないんだ。そりゃ分かってるよな。
Toshiki Inagai nodded while feigning pain and obedience. His expectations and the enemy's expectations. Whether they doubted he was faking his illness or not, they knew what his goal was, and would try to stop it. His stomach contracted from the stress of this gambit, making it seem like his stomach really was starting to hurt. No, it really was. But there was no reason to panic. If he failed with his approach to the doctor, there was nothing to lose. If there was something to lose, it was this method of faking illness to get in touch with the doctor. If he could think of other methods from here on out, it wasn't much. But at the present, this was the easiest and most dramatic way he could think of. The more he thought about it, the more it looked like this was his first and last gambit. Eventually, he heard the sound of a car approaching once again. The sound of the car doors being hurriedly opened and shut. The sounds of several footsteps approaching. A young man in a white medical coat. As he acknowledged the boy, a suspicious look showed itself on his face.
彼は村の子じゃありませんね。
The captors didn't respond. From the looks of it, the young doctor had realized that this was an abnormal situation. One of the captors talked threateningly.
先生には関係のないことです。
For a while, the doctor and his captors silently glared at one another. However, unable to stand the sight of the boy continuing to suffer, the doctor, as the captors had hoped, didn't press any further.
その古い手術跡というのが気になります。何の手術でしたか？
そりゃわからないです。
本当は診療所に連れ帰るべきなんですがね。
先生、そりゃさすがにちょっと。
The doctor said he wanted to bring the boy back to the clinic, but the captors simply silently shook their heads at the notion. It was a fleeting hope, but only natural that the captors would refuse. At that moment, his eyes met with the doctor's. Seeing that the boy's painful state was abnormal, the doctor suspected it was a serious illness.
大丈夫ですか？私は医者です。
I complained about personal space, but he is doing an examination, so, you know.
この手術跡はいつ頃のものですか？
去年の冬に事故で。
事故？そうですか。参ったな。
He couldn't let the doctor figure out that he was faking it here. He had to somehow figure out some way to keep this going and tell the doctor that he was being confined and needed help.
患部を少し触りますよ。痛むところがあったら言ってくださいね。
Seeing that it was extremely painful, the doctor crossed his arms and began to ponder. He had to somehow get himself to a hospital. To Toshiki Inugai, faking this illness was the performance of a lifetime. Probably literally. And we have a chapter break.